Mosaic, a daily news program from Link TV, presents a selection of news reports from independent and state-controlled broadcasters from throughout the Middle East.
Peace and blessings be upon you. Israeli Prime Minister Ariel Sharon promised the Likud party at the party convention today that he may take unilateral steps in the occupied lands if necessary to separate the Palestinians and the Israelis, adding that these steps will have no preconditions and will be done for the security of Israel. He said he will take such steps if the Palestinians do not stop the violence and enter into peace negotiations. Our correspondent in Cairo reported that Director of the Egyptian Secret Services will soon be conducting shuttle diplomacy between the Palestinian Authority and Israel, with new Egyptian suggestions on how to implement the roadmap to peace. Our correspondent added that Omar Suleiman will present to the Palestinian factions and Israel a new ceasefire plan to begin on January 17th, with U.S. guarantees offered by Washington, while a special delegation will arrive in the region in the coming 2 days. An Israeli Haaretz correspondent reported that Tel Aviv will inform the International Court of Justice in The Hague that it rejects its authority to deliberate on the building of the separation wall along the West Bank. Israel will send written arguments to the court presenting its justifications and its security reasons for building the separating wall. The International Court, the primary high court of the United Nations, requested both sides to provide written arguments by January 30th. This comes after the General Assembly of the United Nations passed a resolution asking the court to take up the issue and examine the legal implications of building the separating wall. During a press conference following the cabinet's meeting in Gaza, Palestinian Prime Minister Ahmed Quraie said that due to the continued Israeli aggression against the Palestinians, the meeting with his Israeli counterpart will not head in the expected direction.
This may be the first meeting since Quraie's government was established, but the Palestinian Prime Minister is facing many challenges, particularly at this time. The cabinet is discussing issues such as the current political situation and the continued Israeli aggression in Rafah and in the Gaza Strip. In addition, they are reviewing the unstable situation in Nablus and in the West Bank due to the ongoing Israeli aggression, the continued settlement activity, the construction of the dividing wall, and the Israeli destructive measures. Meanwhile, the Israeli occupation forces are still pushing forward with their military campaign in Nablus and its surrounding areas, demolishing, destroying, and burning homes, and waging arrest campaigns in various parts of the city, damaging more than 15 homes in the old city. The occupation forces also set 2 houses on fire.
The continuous escalation of the Israeli army in Nablus is endangering every single effort carried out by the Arabs or the quarter.
The occupation forces have been blowing up storefronts since dawn, especially in the downtown area. Furthermore, the occupation soldiers attacked many areas in the city, such as Rafida and the Northern Mount. In addition, they occupied a number of homes, turning them into military outposts. The Israeli forces also increased the number of military equipment on the city streets in an effort to enforce a curfew, which some citizens are denying. Palestinian medical sources are warning of the catastrophic health consequences in the old city in Nablus, because the occupation forces are still surrounding a number of homes, preventing them from getting their basic necessities.
The Israeli Prime Minister Ariel Sharon is facing opposition from within his own right-wing Likud party. Sharon's policies toward the Palestinians are being challenged at the party's meeting in Tel Aviv. Meanwhile, Sharon is dismissing criticism from the Central Committee of the 3,000-member Likud party, who support his rival and finance minister Benjamin Netanyahu. The televised meeting of the Likud party gives the extremist members an opportunity to reveal Sharon's plans to separate the Palestinians in the event that the U.S.-sponsored roadmap fails in achieving peace. Members of the Likud Central Committee submitted a list of heated issues to be discussed in the meeting. A large number of soldiers from the Israeli Defense Forces continued to carry out security activities in different parts of Nablus city and Balata refugee camp. The Israeli forces entered the city on December 26 with the objective of destroying the infrastructure of terrorist cells. Palestinian sources told our reporter Qa'id Thair that violent clashes have took place in the heart of the city between dozens of young Palestinian men and Israeli Defense Forces, killing Raji Dayan, who was 18 years old, and injuring 15 others. Israeli forces have divided the city and took over the rooftops of some homes to install military stations on them. Mahmoud al-Alul, the mayor of Nablus, warned against the Israeli security measures, saying that they may lead to a severe food shortage, especially if the curfews continue in the Balata refugee camp in the western neighborhood of Nablus. Avi Poznar, the spokesman of the Prime Minister's office, commented on the clashes that took place in Nablus.
We do have in Nablus an ongoing anti-terror operation which has started a few days ago, which is continuing because the suicide bomber in Tel Aviv this week came from the neighborhood of Nablus. And we have no intention whatsoever to see Nablus becoming a springboard for anti-Israeli terrorism. We will do whatever we can to prevent terrorists from organizing themselves, and we will try to thwart any attempts to infiltrate from the Nablus region into Israel. This is the purpose of our operation.
The Israeli government is preparing to challenge the International Court of Justice's authority to judge Israel's construction of a separation barrier on Palestinian lands in the West Bank. While Israel calls the network of fences and concrete barricades a security precaution, the Palestinians see it as illegal and not accepted. The Israeli Justice Minister called for the route of the barrier to be reconsidered lest it draw sanctions because it cuts into occupied land.
We are considered with the International Court in Hague. We are afraid that they may judge against us, and this may be taken to the United Nations and cause uproar, which may bring measures against Israel. All this, of course, is a result of Muslim and Arab anti-Israeli propaganda, but we should do nothing to give support to this type of anti-Israeli actions.
In Tel Aviv, scuffles broke out at a convention of Israeli Prime Minister Ariel Sharon's party between supporters and foes of his controversial plan to disengage from Palestinians in occupied territory. Speaking at the convention, Sharon vowed to pursue his unilateral plan to separate from Palestinians in occupied territory if needed. He stressed that he will go ahead with his plan and see it carried out unless the Palestinians halt violence and enter peace talks, stressing that he was in charge and not unelected members. Sharon said Jewish settlers in the occupied West Bank were courageous and loyal to Zionism, but had to respect Israeli law and security forces. In Paris, Palestinian Foreign Minister Nabil Shaat held talks with his French counterpart Dominique de Villepin. Talks between the two sides focused on the current situation in the Middle East and means of implementing their roadmap to peace. Speaking to reporters after the talks, Shaat said that the European Union and France in particular should play a key role in the Middle East peace process. Shaat, however, stressed that France's role was overshadowed by the Americans' role on the ground. The roadmap for peace plan, developed by the Quartet of Middle East mediators, which has become a key priority in the Middle East settlement, has been approved by the international community as well as Palestinians and Israelis. Following weeks of tight security around the U.S. airports, a new home security system has been signed to monitor all foreigners entering the U.S. by air or sea. Starting this week, foreigners entering the United States from all but 28 nations will have their fingerprints scanned and their photographs taken as part of new security measures. The program is called U.S. Visit or U.S. Visitor, an immigrant status indicator technology which consists of a small box that digitally scans fingerprints and a computer camera that snaps pictures. All 115 U.S. airports that handle international flights and 14 major seaports are covered. Ink's fingerprints will be taken and checked instantly against a national digital database for criminal backgrounds and terrorist lists. Once the system is up and running, the extra security will take only 10 to 15 seconds per person. The only exceptions will be visitors from 28 countries, mostly European nations, whose citizens are allowed to come to the United States for up to 90 days without visas. Up to 4 letter bombs were sent to the European Parliament, but only one exploded and no one was hurt. There was immediate speculation of a link with a string of letter bombs sent last month from Italy to other European figures and institutions. The bomb that went off was sent to Hans-Gert Pöttering, head of the largest political group in the Parliament, and was opened by a female employee. It only caused a small fire without hurting anyone. One of the other letters was addressed to a Spanish deputy of the European People's Party. All letter bombs sent to the European Parliament were posted on December 22nd in Bologna. NATO's new Secretary General said the alliance may have a role to play in the future reconstruction of Iraq, but should concentrate first on its mission in Afghanistan. Jaap de Hoop Scheffer said as he arrived at NATO headquarters outside Brussels to take over his new post that Iraq would remain on the agenda. De Hoop Scheffer, who succeeded British George Robertson, has served as foreign minister in 2 center-right coalitions and will be the 3rd Dutch NATO chief. Asked if the United States was likely to want NATO to play a larger role in Iraq, De Hoop Scheffer said it was possible, but would depend on political developments in Iraq in the coming months. NATO is already supporting a division in Iraq from alliance member Poland. The leaders of India and Pakistan met for the first time in more than 2 years and pledged to continue efforts to repair relations after the nuclear-armed countries went to the brink of war in 2002. Indian Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee, on his first visit to Pakistan in almost 5 years, talked to Pakistani President Pervez Musharraf for just over an hour on the sidelines of the South Asian Association for Regional Cooperation Summit. Officials refused to give details of the talks or whether the 2 men had made any concrete progress towards resolving their decades-old Kashmir dispute. But Pakistan said the detailed discussions had taken place in a good atmosphere. The Indian Foreign Minister said the issues discussed were very sensitive and both leaders welcomed recent steps towards the normalization of relations between the 2 countries. Pakistan's Information Minister Sheikh Rashid Ahmad raised hopes for some kind of breakthrough by saying the 2 countries were working on a declaration after the meeting.
Secretary General Amr Moussa and Jordanian Foreign Minister Marwan Al-Mashar discussed a unanimous Arab move to take part in hearings at the International Court of Justice in The Hague. The court has agreed to hold a hearing in February on the legality of the wall. Jordan had labeled the separation wall as the most dangerous hurdle facing the Middle East peace process.
The Arab world expressed its deepest concern of the separation wall that Israel is building on the West Bank territory. Under the roadmap, the West Bank and the Gaza Strip will make the Palestinian state by 2005. But the construction of the wall was perceived by Palestinians as an Israeli attempt to preempt the borders of their would-be state. Jordan labeled on Sunday the separation wall as the most dangerous hurdle facing the Middle East peace process and will make it impossible for an independent Palestinian state to survive. Visiting Arab League Secretary General Amr Moussa, who was in Jordan for 2 days of talks that started on Sunday, criticized Israel's decision to grant some work permits to Palestinians. He said it is a small gesture outweighed by other more important negative actions. Moussa and Jordanian Foreign Minister Marwan Mouasher discussed a unanimous Arab move to take part in hearings at the International Court of Justice in The Hague. The court has agreed to hold in February on the legality of the wall. Mouasher said Arab nations were preparing written submissions to the Court of Justice to help it reach a sound decision. He said the major problem was Israel's insistence on building the wall, which cuts through Palestinian cities and villages and in some places separates farmers from their land. The Haaretz Daily's website reported late Sunday, citing a security official supporting the construction, that the first 2 phases of construction had grafted 1.7% of Palestinian land onto lands occupied in 1948. He said that by 2005, when the wall project is completed, that figure will have grown to 6%. Defense Ministry data quoted by the website showed the barrier's deviation has resulted in 15,000 Palestinians being transferred into the so-called Israeli territory west of the barrier.
An Israeli military tribunal sentenced 5 Israelis to a year in prison for refusing to serve in the occupied Palestinian territories. The 5, all aged around 20, had already been convicted last month of insubordination after a court-martial rejected their refusal to serve on grounds of conscience, saying their motives were political. Haggai Matar, one of the servicemen, said, quote, "We did not expect anything else from the tribunal of an army which occupies and oppresses a whole people, and from a regime which has forgotten the meaning of democracy." As Japan plans to send troops into Iraq by Friday, U.S. occupation soldiers are still coming under anti-U.S. attacks, suffering more casualties. Meanwhile, U.S. forces launched raids on Kurdish offices in the northern town of Kirkuk and detained a Kurdish Democratic Party official. This report has more.
Japanese Prime Minister Junichiro Koizumi said Monday that his country will do its utmost to help build a democratic Iraq. In the Prime Minister's traditional New Year's press conference, Koizumi also emphasized the importance of swiftly organizing a stable government for the war-torn nation. Defense Agency Director General Shigeru Ishiba was expected to order the dispatch of the roughly 30-strong detachment on Friday. The advanced team will assess the security situation in Samawa in southern Iraq and sign contracts with owners of the land on which Japan hopes to build its camp.
The situation cannot be described as safe and the mission is risky and tough. Yet, the self-defense force is going there for the reconstruction work for Iraq instead of Japanese civilians.
But attacks on U.S.-led occupation forces and humanitarian agencies have left many Japanese worried that the country's troops could come under fire despite their non-combat mission. An American soldier on foot patrol in the northern Iraqi town of Tikrit was shot and wounded on Sunday. A U.S. military vehicle was captured on camera driving away from the scene of the shooting, with the injured soldier lying across the top of the vehicle as 2 other soldiers secured his body.
I would say the comment I would make on that is something that we experience every day here in Iraq as we send our soldiers out from 35 different nations to provide a safe and secure environment for the people of Iraq. Our soldiers go out knowing they could be shot at, but they still understand that that is their mission, and they understand their mission, and they're carrying out their mission.
Earlier, 2 Iraqi policemen and 3 other employees of a Baquba police station were wounded when U.S. occupation troops opened fire at random after coming under attack with small arms fire. The police station was hit dozens of times when the Americans returned fire, hitting the 5 Iraqis. American forces have been frequently criticized for using excessive force in Iraq by groups such as Human Rights Watch, which has accused the U.S. military of acting with virtual impunity in Iraq. The London-based Independent on Sunday weekly reported that British soldiers beat to death Iraqi prisoner Baha Musa in Basra last September, while 7 other prisoners were subject to torture. The weekly said that according to a British military medical report, Musa died of suffocation. Meanwhile, U.S. troops said they detained an official from the Kurdish Democratic Party during raids also targeting the rival Patriotic Union of Kurdistan in the northern city of Kirkuk. But the head of the KDP in Kirkuk, Najat Hassan Karim, denied any of his party's members were arrested in the past 24 hours. And PUK's Kirkuk chief, Jalal Jawhar, said only branch offices were raided and not the main headquarters. Separately in Mosul, U.S. troops said they have arrested suspects for the downing of a Black Hawk helicopter in the city in mid-November. Brigadier General Mark Kimmett said U.S. forces continued to detain 4 or 5 individuals who were posing as journalists and had pulled up to the side of the crash and started firing small arms fire and rocket-propelled grenades before they were chased by U.S. troops and 4 of them captured. In the meantime, Reuters news agency said that 3 of its employees arrested at the scene of the Fallujah helicopter crash were still in U.S. custody and no reason had been given for their detention.
An Iraqi judge and his son were wounded in an assassination attempt in the northern city of Mosul on Monday. Witnesses reported that gunmen seriously wounded Mohammed al-Jawadi and his son in a failed assassination attempt. The U.S. occupation recently appointed al-Jawadi as general prosecutor of the new anti-corruption commission in Mosul. Sources at the local hospital said al-Jawadi, the general prosecutor of a newly established court to fight corruption, was in critical condition, but his son's life was not in danger. Al Jazeera television aired Sunday what it said the latest Osama bin Laden audio tape. The Saudi origin, blamed for the September 11 attacks, called on Arabs to rise up against America and force the United States to retreat from Iraq. The speaker warned that unless the United States was stopped in Iraq, it would go on occupying Saudi Arabia and the entire oil-rich Gulf region. The voice said there can be no dialogue with the occupiers except with weapons. He addressed the Gulf leaders, saying they know that their turn is coming after seeing the capture of their former comrade in treason and collaboration with America, in reference to former Iraqi President Saddam Hussein. The message loathed for Saddam's secular and brutish policies. And the voice also referred to the Geneva Peace Initiative, an unofficial Israeli-Palestinian peace plan which was officially unveiled in the Swiss city on December 1st. The audio tape was thought to be new because it refers to the Geneva Initiative and the capture of Saddam Hussein, 2 incidents that took place in December. British Foreign Secretary Jack Straw said Monday that it is a safe assumption to say that the latest audio tape is authentic.
President Hosni Mubarak inaugurated on Monday the Conference of the Heads of African Parliaments. Nile TV's Nihal Saad has the details.
President Hosni Mubarak addressed on Monday the opening session of the African Heads of Parliament, the biggest gathering of African parliamentarians in the Black Continent. In his address, the President stressed that democracy and development are the only means towards a better future for Africa, which abounds with human and natural resources. He noted that with the challenges of globalization, democracy and development are intertwined with the aim of achieving progress. The President outlined the challenges facing Africa, like poverty, debts, lack of food, refugees, and epidemic diseases. Such problems, the President noted, were further aggravated with the absence of opportunities provided by the scientific revolution and the information and communications technologies. All these challenges led to the marginalization of Africa in the global development process. The President urged the heads of parliaments to boost African relations as well as the African parliaments with other world parliaments. Concluding, the President stressed the need to take a closer look and study success stories of democratic reforms and development in other countries of the world. The 2-day conference, in which 41 African countries participate, debates the role of African parliaments in resolving political conflicts, sustainable development, and the thorny issues plaguing the African continent like poverty and AIDS. Nihal Saad, Nile TV International, Cairo.
Thanks, Nihal Saad, for that report. And expectations rose today that search teams were near to finding the airliner that crashed in the Egyptian Red Sea resort of Sharm el-Sheikh this weekend, killing all 148 people on board. An official said that the wreckage had just about been located. He said the main portion of the plane appeared to be about 400 meters deep. Meanwhile, French experts deployed an electronic sensor in the waters to try to find the doomed plane's flight recorders, while a French Navy frigate a French Navy Atlantic II patrol plane made its first surveillance of the crash site. French officials said the plane will be used to guide search vessels towards wreckage and bodies using radars and cameras. The French received approval on Monday from Egyptian authorities to deploy the plane and the sensor, as well as divers and a submarine robot. The head of France's underwater recovery operations had said earlier that the propeller-driven robot would be used once the black box's flight recorders had been found.
Since the Islamic Revolution prevailed in Iran, the American-Iranian relations have been volatile for the past 25 years. Maybe the earthquake that destroyed Bomb City in Iran has created one of the most prominent transitions in these relations. In this earthquake, the great Satan offered help to the axis of evil, and it was accepted. My colleague Barouz followed up this case and prepared the following report for us. Whether the motives behind offering help to Iran were humanitarian or political, the rubble created by the earthquake has buried the negative relations that dominated the two countries for the past 24 years. An American flight loaded with humanitarian aid landed in Iran for the first time since the Islamic Revolution. The U.S. Secretary of State, Colin Powell, called for resuming negotiations, and then an American decision was made to lift the ban on sending money to Iran. However, the American President, George Bush, rushed to deny rumors of the possibility of creating a serious change in the U.S. policy towards Tehran.
What we're doing in Iran is we're showing the Iranian people, the American people care, that we've got great compassion for human suffering, and ease restrictions in order to be able to get humanitarian aid into the country. The Iranian government must listen to the voices of those who long for freedom. Must turn over Al-Qaeda that are in their custody, and must abandon their nuclear weapons program.
Bush added that his decision to lift the ban on sending money to Tehran was motivated by humanitarian reasons. Sheikh Hashemi Rafsanjani, the head of the Regime Characterization Department, said that Washington has been sending positive messages for the past several months. Though Iranian officials generally choose to be silent or use caution in responding to previous American initiatives, this time President Mohammad Khatami chose to be clear and firm.
What is the need for negotiation? If there is no mutual confidence to resolve issues and achieve common interests, and if the powerful party wants to dictate its agenda in the negotiations, such negotiations are meaningless.
Iran agrees on resuming negotiations on the condition that the U.S. returns billions of dollars that were frozen after the Islamic Revolution prevailed in Iran, and if they lift economic and trade sanctions, and also put an end to the accusations that Tehran supports terrorism and the development of weapons of mass destruction. Maybe the U.S. administration is taking this initiative to get a sense of what Iran wants to do. It's difficult to view these initiatives as a serious change in the distrustful relations between the two countries, despite the fact that thousands have been buried under the rubble of this destructive earthquake.
Mosaic is made possible by a grant from the John S. and James L. Knight Foundation, which promotes journalism excellence worldwide and invests in the vitality of 26 U.S. communities, and the William and Flora Hewlett Foundation. Additional support is provided by the Firedoll Foundation and Henry and Virgilia Dakin.